For almost 20 years, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban looked untouchable. They were the couple people pointed to as proof that fame didn't have to destroy a marriage. The Oscar-winning actress and the country music star who seemed to escape every Hollywood curse. Until 2025. When Keith quietly moved out of their Nashville home and the illusion cracked overnight, Nicole filed for divorce, and the truth she had carried for years began to surface. Behind the smiles, the hand-holding, and the polished red carpet, Moments was a story of exhaustion, betrayal, and a woman who finally stopped covering for a man who no longer showed up for her. Their picture-perfect marriage had been a mask, and that mask finally fell. For years, people held Nicole and Keith up as Hollywood royalty who somehow kept things real. Talent, charm, devotion, all wrapped into one glowing image. But behind those polished poses was something far more fragile. A love that began like a fairy tale and started fading long before anyone noticed. Their story began in 2005 at the Good Gay USA Gala, where both were celebrated as Australian icons. Nicole was 38, fresh off her Oscar win for The Hours. She looked radiant, but she was still carrying deep wounds from her divorce from Tom Cruise and the painful distance from her 2 adopted children. She had rebuilt her career and her public image, yet something inside her still felt unfinished. Keith was 37, a rising country star whose music already hinted at inner battles. He had struggled with substance abuse for years, sometimes climbing out, sometimes slipping back. To the world they looked like opposites, but in reality, they were 2 people trying to survive the same storm. Their connection wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet, cautious, and real. Keith waited months before calling her, later admitting he felt intimidated by her presence, like she existed on a level he wasn't sure he deserved. But once he did call, they fell fast. By June 2006, they were married in a candlelit ceremony in Sydney. Nicole glowed in Balenciaga. Keith sang to her like something out of a movie. The world called it a golden love story. 4 months later, Keith entered rehab for alcohol addiction. Nicole never saw it coming, but instead of walking away, she stayed. She visited him in treatment, shielded him from headlines, and told friends that love meant forgiveness even when it hurt. For her, it wasn't just about saving a marriage, it was about protecting the family she had already lost once. Over the years, she kept the dream alive through sheer will. Keith thanked her publicly, calling her his saving grace. She said he brought her back to life. In 2008, they welcomed their daughter Sunday Rose, followed by Faith Margaret in 2010. To the outside world, they had everything: Hollywood elegance and Nashville warmth wrapped into one beautiful family. But behind closed doors, the cracks grew wider. His long tours, the shadows of addiction that never fully disappeared, her constant fear of losing another partner. She waited up for calls that never came while he buried himself in music and distance. Nicole stayed patient, graceful, forgiving. But even the strongest heart has limits. By the time the public sensed something was wrong, their marriage had already begun to unravel. What looked effortless had become a performance. They smiled for cameras long after the love stopped feeling easy. By their 10th anniversary, they had survived more than most couples ever would. But survival came at a cost. Nicole carried the weight. Keith grew tired of being seen as the one who always needed saving. She wanted peace and presence. He wanted motion and space. They made rules to stay close, but real life ignored them. Missed calls piled up. Schedules clashed. Quiet resentment replaced passion. By the early 2020s, their image had become part of their brand. Magazines crowned them Hollywood's last real marriage. Fans needed that story, so they played their roles. But people close to Nicole noticed what the world didn't want to see: the forced laughter, the slight flinch when Keith touched her like it was scripted. By 2023, whispers spread that they were living separate lives. Keith was away more than he was home. Nicole looked exhausted. Still, she tried. She wasn't about to let silence take 2 more children after losing so much already. In early 2024, the cracks became impossible to hide. While filming Practical Magic 2 in London, friends noticed something different in her voice. She stopped speaking about Keith in the present tense. Back in Nashville, Keith quietly set up his own place, telling friends he needed space. Nicole didn't know he was already gone. 4 months. She believed they were just surviving another rough patch. When asked, she calmly said, "Marriage takes work." But she was doing that work alone. Keith stopped returning calls, skipped family dinners. Days turned into weeks. By June 2024, they were living 2 separate lives. The last time they were seen together was at a soccer match in Nashville. Even then, the distance between them said everything. Friends say that night was when Keith made his final decision. When Nicole returned from London, she walked into an empty house. No argument, no goodbye. Just absent stop. She stayed silent, focused on her daughters, refused to let the story collapse into chaos. Even when whispers began about another woman on Keith's tour, she didn't react publicly. So when news broke in September 2025 that Nicole had filed for divorce, many assumed she was the one who walked away. The truth was quieter and crueler. Keith had left months earlier. Her filing wasn't revenge. It was closure. The paperwork said. Irreconcilable differences. But those words hid 19 years of loyalty and endurance. Finally breaking, Keith had already signed weeks earlier. Nicole was still hoping when he was already gone. What shocked people most was his reaction. Days after the filing, he performed on stage without his wedding ring and changed the lyrics of a breakup song. The message landed like a punch. For the first time, the man she protected for years was rewriting the story publicly. Nicole said nothing. In October, her Vogue interview revealed the truth she could no longer hide. She sounded unsure, reflective, like someone standing at the edge of a life she no longer recognized. She admitted she didn't know where her life was going anymore. Friends said she was still in love with him. That was the hardest part. Loving someone who had already left. But love wasn't enough. Loyalty had become a cage. When she discovered Keith may have used pieces of their private life in his music, and he refused to respond. The silence said everything. By late October, the headlines faded. Nicole was seen walking with her daughters, calm but changed. Those close to her said she finally understood that you cannot rescue someone who doesn't want to rise with you. For the first time in years, she wasn't fixing anyone. She wasn't protecting an image. She was simply trying to feel like herself again. The perfect Hollywood marriage was gone. What remained was something real. A woman who finally stopped shielding the man who broke her heart.